Welcome back to the Lost Legacies podcast. I'm Matt.
And I'm Sam.
All right, Sam, we got a doozy of an episode today. We're talking about
Yes, we do.
Season 1, Episode 10, Raised by Another. After Claire begins suffering from terrible nightmares and believing that she was attacked in her sleep, Hurley begins a census, only to discover that one of the survivors was not on the plane. Da-da. So what did you think, man? This was nuts.
This one was crazy. You know, we've gotten some pretty crazy stuff so far in the first 9 episodes. You know, and I don't know, maybe I just sort of misjudged like how crazy this show was, how crazy it was gonna get. You know, I know that there's some kind of monsters and stuff, and we've seen some, I don't know, Jack's dead father is kind of walking around somewhere, and we don't know what happened to his corpse. Does anybody know what happened to his corpse? I don't know.
It's almost purposely misleading.
Yeah. And it's like
I know we've talked about that a couple episodes ago, how things are actually very slow for like the content that the show is. And again, last week was the first week in quite a while where we got more mystery and more of the island. That was Saeed's episode. And now they're just doubling down, and it's like almost as if they're going even further now, episode 10.
Yeah, and this is a real interesting one because everybody's stories so far, all their flashbacks and everything, with the exception of maybe Locke, kind of feels like you know, it was all an accident. You know, nobody should be here.
Mm-hmm.
They all have lives that are seemingly just like stopped abruptly, you know, because of the crash.
Mm-hmm.
Locke may be the only one whose sort of his life technically doesn't start until he gets to the island, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so like everybody else, you know, it's just a thing. Like, we have our lives, we have our problems, we have things that we have to deal with that we should be getting back to. And now we're here on this island, seemingly away from those problems, except they've all sort of morphed into something different. This is the first episode, though, where we are posited the idea that this was fated to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That the crash of Oceanic Flight 815 was supposed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That at least one person was supposed to be here.
Yeah.
And that person isn't even technically Claire. It's Claire's baby.
Right. Now, Locke has brought up before how this place is different. We were brought here, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And even in this episode, he talks to Hurley. He's like, I was looking for something that I didn't find it. It found me. So he's been, you know, kind of hinting at that to the audience. But you're right. This is the first time where it's like, okay, there's something outside. It's not even in our main timeline story. This is a flashback. And this is our first flashback that does contain something of the other, whatever you want to call it, supernatural, science fiction, whatever this psychic guy is. This is the first time we've got that from the flashback. And you're right. Yeah, this was the first time where it's the theory is, hey, this was supposed to happen.
You know, it's kind of weird because this show, like you said, it's misleading, and it's almost like they had to trick the audience into watching something that was science fiction, you know. But I guess it's kind of telling either of like myself, because when I was watching it, and Claire goes to the psychic and he starts having, you know, like he starts having like his reading and he freaks out. Like I was just sort of like, oh, okay, sure. Like, I don't know, like for some reason that aspect of this science fiction show was just a little too much for me to believe.
Mhm.
I can take people who are somehow miraculously healed and can walk now when they couldn't before. I can take that. I can take mysterious French signals and weird metallic monster noises. I can take a lot of stuff, even dead bodies walking around. I'm like, yeah, sure. It's a mysterious island. Why not?
Mhm.
But the fact that like somebody was like led here by a psychic vision, I'm like, all right, fine. That's a little much. But as it kept going, like I don't know. I guess like at the out, and I guess that's the point. At the outset, it's sort of like we're like Claire in that, she's having this reading. She
Mhm.
just wants to know what her life is going to be like. And this guy's just acting super weird about it. Like, oh no,
Mhm.
I can't take your money. Like, just leave. I can't finish the reading. And you're like, yeah, okay, this guy's a crackpot, whatever. And then as the episode goes on, you're continued to be, thrown that idea of like, is he crazy or is he gifted? Is he touched?
Mhm.
And what does he know? What yeah, so it was interesting, and I thought that was an interesting thing to find out about myself, where it's like, what are the limits that I'm willing to like just sort of like let myself, sort of sit down and be like, yeah, okay, sure. That can happen. That's a thing that happens. And then what are something that I'm a little less inclined to just easily swallow?
Right, right. And I think they did it. They did it. I want to say they did it right because right off the bat, it's kind of hard to remember what my initial feelings were the first time I saw it, but so now after several watches, it's like okay, yeah, I'm more into that sidekick in the story, but I don't know. I feel like they handled it properly.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost as if they know what the audience is going to think, you know, like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, it's almost like, are we jumping the shark yet? Are we already there? We're
Yeah.
introducing this psychic with some kind of powers and some kind of ominous destiny for Claire and her baby. Um, and it's instantly like Claire and her friend writes it off as okay, it's crazy. Okay, whatever. But the
Mm-hmm.
way they keep bringing it back and the way he's saying like he has a plan, it kind of makes it a little more believable. It's like, oh, I found a family who you should go to and all that stuff. But then, of course, all the way at the end of the episode, the big twist that Charlie is the one who realizes it. Like, oh, the psychic's the one who put her on this plane, and it had to be this flight. He's like, what if this was his intention the whole time? He knew this plane was going to crash, and Claire would be with the baby. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so even though there are points where like, okay, I know what's happening. I got you lost. I see what you're doing. It's still like a twist at the end. It was like, oh, okay, all right. Didn't see that coming. The psychic got one over me. Lost
Yeah.
one, mad zero. So, but this episode, I'm liking the pattern here. Like each week, again at the beginning they do drop a little more because as of last episode, Saeed had been gone for 2 days. This
Mm-hmm.
episode, he had been gone almost a week.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, they have been there around 15-ish days, so about half a month.
Okay.
Um, and I like how every episode, yes, this is a big episode for Claire. There's a lot of stuff going on, but at the same time, it's those little details we've mentioned about survival. Last episode, okay, people are starting to get stressed. They're starting to get bored. How do we solve that? Before then, it was the water situation. How are we
Mm-hmm.
going to get water? All that. So it's all those little things. This episode is the fact that hey, there's a pregnant woman on this island. What what are we going to do? Like rescue's not coming. We're going to have to deliver this baby here.
Yeah.
And that's one of those moments where it's just like, oh my god, I don't know what to do. And I gotta say, Jack's
Yeah.
a good doctor, man. For the most part, he has great bedside manner, and that's what I was really noticing more in this episode until he doesn't believe Claire. It's like,
Yeah.
oh man. Which, I mean, it's fair enough. Even the way it was shot and everything and the clues that were there, it really seems like she's hallucinating or something. The fact that she's
Yeah.
sleepwalking on this island, literally the worst place on the planet to sleepwalk.
Right?
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like you can't really fault anybody for not believing Claire because,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, she was just sleepwalking, having a horrible nightmare where she pressed her fingernail so deep in her palm that she started bleeding. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like yeah, that's tough. It's
Mm-hmm.
tough, and it is also kind of a thing, when because I didn't even think about it until we get that scene with uh Shannon, Boone, and Hurley, where Hurley's like, "Oh yeah, we had a situation up at the caves," and it's like, "Oh yeah, I guess like that was the thing I didn't think about, like how fast like word travels, of something like that, It's like,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, like that's a pretty that's a dangerous, sort of situation to be in. They're already trapped on an island with no hope of rescue, and they already know of at least one known criminal who was on the plane.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, of course, not everybody knows that it's Kate, but you know, so yeah, for everybody else to know that, like, yeah, like that criminal is still at large. So yeah, like who is it? So yeah, I think bravo Hurley for having the idea of the census. That's a great idea. And yeah, because he's like, he said it perfectly to Jack too. Like I was walking around with Adam and Scott or whoever, and I just thought to myself, who are those guys? I don't
Mm-hmm.
know these guys. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, totally. And I think I feel like it took a lot longer for them to do it, and maybe that was just a thing with like the writers being like, hey, we wanted to do like these other things first. But yeah, like almost a week after a crash, a situation like this, like, yeah, like that there 2 weeks, I'm sorry, almost 2 weeks after this crash, I kind of feel like that's a little long to start, trying to figure out, like who all survived and what everybody's names are,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I don't know. I think it kind of goes back to the division of the survivors. They're split up
Yeah.
now. I don't know. I would have to be in that situation. When I end up
Yeah.
stranded
Yeah.
on an island with a bunch of strangers, I'll let you know how it goes.
Okay,
But
cool. Do it like day 2, okay?
yeah, yeah. But I mean, we did. I guess it's more of the behind the scenes type comment. But we mentioned last week how there's a lot more. There's new faces this time around.
Mhm.
And so as an audience, yeah, there's people we don't recognize, in particular, like Ethan, for example, which we'll talk about
Mhm.
later. But yeah, I don't know. I think there really was no reason up to this point to check out the manifest. Maybe
Yeah, I
I guess
guess
maybe
not.
once they found the handcuffs, which was super early.
I mean, again, I think it's kind of like, one, this is an unprecedented situation, and
Mm-hmm.
nobody, there is no manual on how to deal with it. So it's like, yeah, I guess 2 weeks after this crash, it's like, oh, hey, yeah, like we actually don't know anybody, and everybody. I think everybody's still holding on to the hope that rescue is coming. They're not
Right.
supposed to be there that long. So yeah, I guess I I can excuse that. I just thought that was interesting. Like, oh yeah, like why haven't we tried to know everybody, beforehand?
I can excuse it as far as like realistically going, like if we're really in that situation, yeah, there's a lot to do, but at the same time there's a lot of downtime. I
Mhm.
think that it wouldn't really need to happen unless something epic or something really bad happened like this episode.
Yeah.
However, from a behind the scenes standpoint, from a creative standpoint, I wish they would have set this up better,
Mm.
because our first episode with Ethan was last week, and it was very, I don't know, it's just very, it wasn't odd, it was just out of place. Locke's introducing Ethan to the others because he's a hunter. It's like, oh, okay. And that's all we get of Ethan that episode. We see him in the background a few times. And this time it's the same thing. They're kind of pointing it out. Like Hurley's like, oh, who are you, dude? Blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, we find out at the end, like, oh, he's the one. His name isn't on the flight manifest. Who the hell is he?
Mm-hmm.
He's not one of the plane crash survivors. I just wish they had handled that better. The way it was is almost very obvious. Oh, it's this guy. The second he popped up in this episode, it wasn't even in the beginning. It's like halfway through on this, like the second time when Claire was attacked. He's there. I'm like, oh, this guy is here. Which is like, if you're gonna pay the actor to fly out to Hawaii to film this episode, why not include him more? He wasn't at the first nightmare scene. That would have been more believable. The first time we see him, like, oh, he's trying to help. He's just another background guy. And second time, okay, he's still helping and blah, blah, blah. I just feel like they could have done so much more. The badass thing to do was to have made him like a guest star for several episodes so we get used to him.
Yeah.
But I don't know. They probably just didn't think of it at the time, or
probably not.
Later on in the series, like I think it was after season 3 or after the writer's strike, they start doing like little webisodes, which was a big part of like the Lost campaign and like the, I don't know, quote unquote extended universe. And one of them is Jack meeting Ethan for the first time. And it shows him like, oh, okay, it's whatever, like a couple days or a week after the crash. And I'm like, that would have gone, above and beyond to introduce him to the audience. Like, oh, okay, yeah, this guy's here. He's helping. He's another survivor. We wouldn't have had a second thought about it.
Yeah.
But just the way they handled it was just like, all right, who's this guy? And I don't remember the actor's name. I think it's like William Motherper. Sorry, William. I do know he's Tom Cruise's cousin, though.
Oh,
he was a villain in Mission Impossible 2. You remember that?
That's right. That's right.
He was like the computer guy.
I was like, yeah, he's got one of those faces that like.
Yeah, that's what I say. No offense to William, but you kind of have a bad guy face. At least the way they present him here, like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's true.
He has like an evil Nathan Fillion vibe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I can see that. All right. We need to get them on like a show together.
Yeah. Two brothers. Like
evil.
One's a cop, the other went to the streets, But we'll switch it, like Nathan Fillion's the guy in the streets, street tough.
Yeah. He's like the con or something. Yeah. I like it.
So yeah, I think that would have been a much bigger twist if we had already known Ethan and seen him like actually helping and contributing. And again, it goes back to my whole thing. Like, I really wish they had a set number of extras and then they would start slowly upgrading those roles. I think that would have changed everything. That would have been so awesome.
Yeah.
But alas,
hindsight 2020, maybe they'll do that when we get Lost 2.0,
Right. Well, speaking of hindsight, I was thinking like this is episode 10. So here we are in 2020. Most television shows, they're wrapping up their season in episode 10. Maybe they'll go more. If you're on television, you'll probably go 16. If you're like big time ABC show, you'll probably go over 20. But most of our shows nowadays are streaming and they're around 10 episodes. So it's really interesting for the pace wise. It's going to be cool to see how Lost keeps it up for the full 24 episodes of the first season, because we're still less than halfway through.
Yeah. I'm curious. I didn't even think about that until you said it, but yeah, it's, that's pretty crazy. Something like Game of Thrones, they're already done. Episode 9 would be like their penultimate episode. Something bad happens, people getting killed. There's a big hour-long battle, or something, but yeah, so like this technically would be the end of season 1, and now we'd be like, okay, so where do we go from here, and all this stuff. But Lost, I won't say their story is like their season is finally getting started, but I think a lot of the story threads that they've set up are now finally getting picked up. We're getting this. We got it last week with Saeed that like, okay, there are other people on this island. They're not just Rousseau's group. Like they were there and now they're all dead except her. Like it's not just that. There are other people on the island who we don't know their intentions, but just from Rousseau's, ramblings, kind of seems like they're not great.
Right.
And then I feel like with this episode, everything that Locke has sort of been spouting to other characters, I feel like that's kind of coming to a head here because, Locke is very much the person who's like, yeah, we got sent here for a reason. We're here for a reason, and he's trying to find that. I think it's really cool that we get a character who like is seemingly outside of all of that.
Yeah.
Everybody else is having their own crisis of faith, off experiencing these things. And here we just have a woman who just wants to like have her baby, like that's all she wants. And then we slowly in her backstory realize that out of all the people on the plane, she's probably the most important person on that plane. She was supposed to be on this island. And I think that's mind boggling. So it's like that just raises the question, why? Why Claire? Why her baby? Why on this island? What is wrong with this island?
It's also fun how out of everyone, she's been in the show the least.
Yeah.
Because even though we have like Boone and Shannon, we haven't really got to know them too well. Claire's the one character who we've had several episodes without her. She's only been in a handful of episodes, these first 10 episodes. And now we're getting this like, oh, okay, maybe she is more important than we were anticipating. So yeah. And kind of just by coincidence, Sam, I think this is kind of lining up perfectly with the time of year because although Lost never really had the winter finale or anything, the halfway point of Lost is lining up with us right now. This episode's airing in December. And yeah, I think that first year, 2004, we had 12 episodes in 2004.
Before the Christmas break? Okay.
Yeah, and we're going to hit that. So like our break is almost, we're really not going to take a break, but the end of the year is going to line up perfectly with like their winter break.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I think that's a mystery.
A mystery. Fortuitous.
Fortuitous.
Wait a second. Are we picking up a story thread here in our podcast?
Wait a second. Are we lost? Oh my God. Oh man. So back to Rousseau and stuff. That's kind of that was like our first little bit of info from Lost actually giving us something, giving us some kind of answer. And you'll find it's a typical Lost fashion. We get an answer with like 10 more questions. So like you said, yeah, we know Rousseau's group is gone. We kind of know what happens to them, but now there's all these more questions. Well, who else is out there? Now, because of this, we know that there are others, speaking of which, this episode is called Raised by Another, which with the proper punctuation and spacing can also be called Raised by an Other. I saw that fact online. I was like, that's interesting. Okay. But of course, it's referencing the fact that the sidekick is telling Claire that he literally says this, there is no happy life for this baby where you're not in it. This baby needs your influence. Otherwise, badness is going to happen.
Yeah.
To quote Sonny Crockett in the Miami Vice movie, do you know the definition of foreboding? It means badness is happening right now.
Wow.
Probably not Michael Mann's best line of dialogue, But it's a great movie
before
nonetheless.
before a movie about Miami cops, I think that's I
Yeah.
think that's fine.
Yeah.
That's pretty believable for me. Um, so I'm just gonna throw this out there, but like, who the hell is Claire's baby? Like, how is this baby so important that like
I already told you, dude. I already
like
told
is
you.
she?
It's a little evil baby. He's gonna Jaeger his mom.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
Yeah, man.
Well, he's got to get on it then because she's at least 2 more weeks away from having said child.
Yeah,
So
she's super close. So let's talk
yeah,
about because the episode starts while she's dreaming. The first thing we see, she wakes up and the baby's gone. And
yeah.
I thought, man, I told you, he just popped out and ran off. But
I'm
yeah,
not
that
counting that. You don't get a point for that.
I don't get a point for that.
No, you don't.
It was a nutty dream, man. I loved a lot of it. Technically, the audio they used.
Mm-hmm.
There were noises from like the plane crash in this dream while she's like walking through the forest and stuff. And let's talk about Locke.
Mm-hmm.
She sees Locke in her dream, pulling, I don't know, maybe like tarot cards or something, but which sound like knives or blades as he pulls it. And
Mm-hmm.
he looks to her and says, you were supposed to take care of the baby. Something
Mm-hmm.
to that fact, right? Like you were supposed to protect it.
Yeah.
And his eyes, he has one black eye and one white eye, just like the little
Yep.
stones. I'm like, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
God, it's so creepy.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then of course the dream ends when she finds what is it called, the
Well, it's
nursery
like,
bed. I don't have
yeah,
kids,
like
so I don't know what
the
it's called.
cradle,
The
I
crib.
guess. Yeah. The crib.
The
Yeah, there you
crib
go.
with the little Oceanic Flight 815 toys just kind of dangling over.
Mobile.
Yeah,
Yeah.
spinning, and then that's where we hear like the plane crash. And she starts digging through the blanket looking for the baby, and all she finds is blood.
Ugh.
And she wakes up screaming. Everyone freaks out. When they calm her down, they realize like her hands are bloody. I was like, oh God. And that's how the
Yeah.
episode starts, right off the bat.
I have to say, I really have to appreciate, uh, people who really know what dreaming is like
Mm-hmm.
and know just how wild dreams can be,
Mm-hmm.
and who portray that on film or TV in that sort of quote unquote realistic fashion.
Mm-hmm.
Dreams aren't things that we can just like move into, and it's like, oh, and
Yeah.
here's everything. So like, yeah, I I really appreciated that dream sequence being as ominous, but also just as like crazy as it is,
Mm-hmm.
and
And
yeah.
it starts off very like innocent. She hears a baby crying and she realizes her baby's gone. She starts going. So like I don't think there's any audience member that's like, oh my God, where's the baby? Like I think everyone knows it's a dream.
Mm-hmm.
Just the way it was shot, the way the noises were, it was perfect. And I
Mm-hmm.
was literally just watching Inception last night, and I forgot the part where DiCaprio tells her, he's like, do you ever remember dreams starting? He's like, no, you're already part of the way through. I was like, oh yeah, I kind of had that same vibe in there. Although we do see Claire wake up in this dream, we get that vibe that like almost instantly, oh, something's not right here. So originally the director, I forgot her name. She was a woman director, and I'm trying to like keep track of like what who are the writers, who are the filmmakers, men, women, what color. I just want to see what the writer room looks like. But this
Mm-hmm.
this woman, she directed it, and she was dead set on filming the nightmares in black and white. And Jack
Mm-hmm.
Bender said no, and she kept pushing, and he just like turned her down. He's like, no. And she finished the episode, but she left. She's like, she never worked with Lost again. She was so pissed.
Oh wow.
Which sucks, but at the same time, like, I get it. I understand why they didn't want to do it, and I think it works better without black and white.
Mm.
Because if it had been black and white, we would already know, okay, something's up. There had to be some kind of reality in those first opening seconds of the dream. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you think it's real, you think something's happening until you realize, oh, this is nuts. So,
I mean, yeah, I guess I can see that.
because also, how do you justify the attack? Because then you would have to intersplice color footage of an attack with a black and white dream. So you would instantly know, like, oh, someone was attacking her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because otherwise it wouldn't make sense. Well, the dreams were all black and white, and the attack wasn't. Oh, okay, it's real. I think it would give away too much, you know, because that's the whole thing. We don't know till the end that, oh shit, this was real.
Mm-hmm.
We're kind of on Jack's side, like we think she's hallucinating.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I do feel like that would have been an interesting choice. You know,
and I like
and
when shows
especially
do
because
that.
Yeah, I love when shows do that.
They take some risks.
Yeah, and especially with something like Lost, like we haven't really seen too many like artistic flourishes, you know, like that.
Yeah.
I would say maybe the closest is when they had when they did Locke's episode, you know, and we get that reveal at the end of the episode. We're like, oh yeah, like he was in the wheelchair, and then we like immediately cut from that to him on the island, and you know, you have like the bombastic music going, and he's like, you know, getting up like that. To me, that kind of felt like a Shawshank Redemption moment.
Yeah.
You know, where it's like you're finally noticing the music, and you know, it's this like very beautiful kind of triumphant moment. Yeah, but for me, outside of that moment, Lost hasn't had too many of those like flourishes, like I said, and I feel like that could have been interesting. You know,
Yeah.
that could have been interesting. I definitely see why they didn't do that, but that's a shame that she never that director didn't come back. Come back after
and
that.
because this was a really good episode, and the directing was a part of that. No doubt. I wish he had come back because I think it would be really interesting to see. I love seeing directors who work on projects and you see they stick with shows for several years, and you can tell like, okay, they're going to give the big moments or the big episodes to certain people. So I think she could have really kind of made a stamp on this show, even without the black and white. But I do enjoy shows that like change it up the style every now and then. It's like, oh, okay, this is the one episode that's black and white. Okay, that's fine. That wouldn't work on Lost, especially when there's so many mysteries and so many like it's mysteries and philosophies and all this stuff. Like people are trying to solve this problem, and then you have this just kind of style change. I think it would be jarring, and it would probably throw people off in like the wrong way, not in a red herring kind of way, but it might just end up more confusing, you know? But I could definitely see something like who's the guy who did directed Prisoner of Azkaban?
Alfonso Cuarón.
Yes. I could see him directing like an episode. Especially think of him doing this episode. Just like that kind of darkness, because this episode wasn't as dark as last week, Saeed getting tortured. But there's supposed to be this dreamlike quality of like, we're not exactly sure what is real and what isn't when it's coming to Claire. I would have loved to see something like that. So instead of maybe black and white, play around with your fades, you know, the way you're fading or something.
Even some interesting sort of like saturation, you know, could have gone a long way.
Yeah.
You know, like or like a color pop. You know, again, you know, Lost is supposed to be, you know, like realistic, you know, as real as possible. But it is this sort of sci-fi, almost fantasy sort of place as well. So like, I feel like a good, well placed like color pop of something like blue, you know, or even something like red, kind of like we saw in the pilot. that big pop of red at the end. I think something like that even could have gone a long way.
Right. Yeah. Speaking of style, you know what I wish the show would have jumped more into?
What?
Comedy. I want a buddy cop spinoff with Sawyer and Hurley. I loved it, man. Their interaction was just so simple. Hurley's trying to find the flight manifest. He knows Sawyer has it. So he just lays it out. He's like, this is what I'm looking for. You're going to give it to me because you could use the points. And Sawyer says, well, you sure know how to butter up a man, Stay Puff. And I love it. Like Hurley just smiles and like laughs it off, you know?
He's like, that's what I'm good at.
That's what I'm good at. I'm like, yes, dude. I'm like, I want to see more of those two. Like, especially after like the first episode where like he's calling him Lardo, you know, and Sawyer's just being like downright mean. Yeah, I would love to see more of this humorous side of Sawyer, the lighter side. But we also got a little more info on Hurley this week. And I love what you mentioned it, you know, he's talking about he doesn't know who Scott and Steve are. And he's like, my name's not even Hurley. It's a nickname. My name is Hugo Reyes, which was his first name drop. It's like, Hurley's a nickname, and I won't explain why. I want to know.
I know. Now I want you can just say that, Hurley.
But he goes into full cop mode, you know, CSI, whatever. Columbo, there we go. He goes into Columbo mode, and he starts investigating. He interviews everyone.
That's what Lost needs. Yeah.
They need Columbo. Hurley,
the island's Columbo, yeah.
He literally goes to everyone, interviews everyone, asking for their name, whatever info he can find, addresses, all this stuff. Yeah, and in the process, we have some very humorous scenes, some awkward scenes. It was kind of awkward when he essentially he's meeting Locke for the first time, but it eventually ends up with the big twist at the end when he compares the names to the manifest. And he finds out Ethan Rom wasn't on the flight.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's another scene too, because like we literally got nothing from that scene where they're talking, him and Hurley. This would have been an interesting moment to like kind of introduce Ethan to the audience. Like, oh, okay, this is a guy who's been here this whole time doing this. But like we didn't even get that. They're just like they gave us very little, and it just felt very out of place. Hurley has already been doing this with other people. It was almost obvious. Like, oh, okay.
I feel like, yeah, I agree. I feel like the reason why they did that, because they show us three very different scenes where Hurley's talking to people about it. And the first scene we see is with Locke. And he's on the beach. He's doing something, and you know we get essentially what Hurley's looking for: your name, wherever you lived before this, and why were you on the plane? You know, like what was your reason for being in Sydney? You know, and getting on that plane. And so we get that, and then he's a little creeped out by Locke's answer. You know, rightfully so. And then we get the scene with Ethan, which kind of reiterates the same thing, but I feel like it's just a nicer sort of situation, or at least it's just a nicer moment where somebody isn't like right off the bat creeping him out, and I feel like Ethan gives Hurley everything he wants, so he's like, yeah, I'm good, that was good, and then he leaves. Like, and then when we get the scene with Shannon and Boone, they're both like already they're just both so like standoffish about like questions, answering stuff, and it's like, okay, typical Shannon and Boone. They're just going to be argumentative for the sake of it. But then that's where we get Boone sort of telling Hurley, like, actually, like, you don't need to do this. You just need the flight manifest, and you'll find everything. And like, oh, okay. And so it's like, so each scene is doing something different. But I do feel like I do feel like what you could have done to maybe sort of dissuade the audience, or to like, sort of like ease expectations or something. Uh, you could have just done the same scene with Hurley and Locke. You just have Ethan there with it,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah. Okay, I see that. Kind of
Have
the way he
have
was with
have
Locke in last episode.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you show that, like, they don't have to be like best friends or whatever, but like if they're working together on something, like he
Hmm.
was helping Locke hunt. If he was
Yeah.
helping Locke with whatever he was doing there, then that would go a long way, to sort of be like, oh yeah, like, I know this guy, like, he was here. And that is also sort of getting Ethan in a position where he's around more people, because it is a little obvious, after the fact, where you're like, oh yeah, that guy was just alone. Like, yeah, obviously he's
Yeah.
like doing stuff, but he was just kind of by himself, and he was a little like too standoffish.
And the only reason is because we don't already know him. That's why we kind of
Yeah,
feel that way. If it had
yeah,
been that way with any other character, like Michael or even like Jin, like if he had like it probably would have been comedic. He's trying to communicate with Jin, trying to get his name. We would
yeah,
have felt completely different. But the fact that Hurley's talking to this guy we don't know alone in the woods, in the forest, that's what instantly like our kind of radars are pinging, you know?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I feel like that scene really had to do with the fact that the writers knew they didn't have enough Ethan material for that twist to kind of pay off at the end,
Yeah,
you know? So
yeah,
again, hindsight, if it had been me, I would have introduced him several episodes ago, um, either just in the background or have him hunting with Locke or whatever, just kind of helping. And
you know,
I would have completely skipped the scene where he talks to Hurley this episode,
mm-hmm.
you know?
You
And
know what
then
would have worked
twist.
even better
Huh.
is if it was the hypochondriac guy from the last episode.
Oh, yeah. That would be cool because like he's placed there for like giggles. It's a humorous
Yeah,
character that's there. You know,
yeah,
if I'm gonna I mean, I guess you could say, yeah, if you're gonna infiltrate a group, you don't want attention on you. But at the same time, that would have been the best way to divert attention off of you. Oh, it's not the
yeah.
hypochondriac? No, it's not gonna be this guy. You know
Right?
what I mean?
It's
They mentioned
instead of
him this
some
episode, but
random.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's right. That's right. Because the Hurley gets Ethan confused with that guy, Larry Lawrence.
Lance.
No,
Lance.
Lance.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's like, oh, skinny guy,
yeah,
glasses, red hair. Yeah.
yeah. He's like, I can totally see how you got us mixed up. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking about that. Like that would have been, not no, not to be all, like meta and like, oh, we're gonna set up that it's Ethan, but then ta-da, surprise, it's actually Lance. It's like, what, like,
Mm-hmm.
but even if they had done that, I feel like that may have been better, because it would have been like, oh, like, all you had to do was just have Lance be the guy that Charlie tells, like, hey, like, go get Jack, and then
Yeah.
see him run off,
See,
that would have been enough.
I thought that too. Like Ethan, we never really there's nothing to really show that it was Ethan. It was just the way Ethan kept showing up. We're like, oh, okay, there's something up with this guy. So I did feel like there needed like a quote unquote like a distraction or a red herring. So that could have been in it, like you said, oh, it's Ethan is really someone else. But what I was also thinking, which would have been an interesting way to go, is um, Charlie, because he's very insistent in this episode to take care of Claire and protect her. And there's a couple moments where I'm just like, dude, just back off, like take the hint, step
Yeah.
off. And it's really nice. I like Charlie and Claire's kind of coming together at the end. They're like, look, we're here for each other. I trust you. That would have been a cool arc right there. If she's just kind of paranoid of everyone, of course Charlie's going to be the one sleeping closest to her.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been rough on him as a character, Charlie, but I think that would have been really cool. That really would have thrown everyone off. Like, not that she thinks it's Charlie, but that she just doesn't trust him. She doesn't trust
Mm-hmm.
anyone. It would have kind of been more of a gut punch too, when she kind of turns him down like midway through the episode.
Yeah.
But then of course it's very redeeming at the end. Then we find out like, oh, it's Ethan, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that would have been cool because as an audience, we would know it's not Charlie, but it's almost like the characters, the Claire and the characters in the mystery play, they're going to be the ones looking in the wrong place.
Yeah.
So that would have been cool too.
Yeah.
So talk about all these people. Who's your MVP this week?
I mean, it's got to be Claire.
Gotta be Claire. Emily de Raven.
Like, let's take a minute because I feel like we've like talked a lot this episode, sort of around Claire, but we haven't really talked about Claire this episode. And she's great. She's phenomenal. I was worried, going into this, starting off the pilot, because like I already knew that, like, yeah, I knew like the bigger names. I knew Jack, I knew Sawyer, I knew Kate, I knew Charlie, I knew Locke, like I knew they had a bigger story to play, or at least like they were the characters that, I kept hearing about, everybody's talking about them. But, shout out to her because she is amazing in this episode. You can see, I don't know, she's an actress. She's acting. Like this is phenomenal. Like she's getting to do these things where it's like having to portray this sort of this like subtlety, this like this idea of uncertainty, and she's so subtle about a lot of it. When she's talking with her boyfriend in her first flashback, and he's saying like, like, no, this could be a good thing, like we like maybe this is a sign that we can do this. And she's like, what, with my like $5 an hour job? And then he's like, well, you're not the only one who works. Like I have my painting. And just the way she sort of like, she doesn't necessarily roll her eyes, but like she just moves her eye in a way that's like, I've heard this before, but I'm just not going to say anything and just be like,
I groaned out loud. I was like,
you're right. I know. I did too. I was like, oh, you're one of those. Okay. Yeah. When was the last time you actually painted anything, Chuck?
Or sold a painting? I don't even
remember his name.
Yeah.
Or sold a painting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that, and then when they have their breakup conversation, she's doing such a great job of like, you can see that like these are all things that have come up, before.
Yeah.
And she like, even when he throws like the daddy issues thing at her, she's just like, no, you don't get to do that. Like, wow, like there's so much going on, and like in her performance, she's just like killing it. And
you can see her processing, like she was right. She knew this was coming, and I was just like, oh man. Yeah, dude, it's interesting because Emily de Raven did fantastic. However, I will say I still feel like out of the characters we've got flashbacks for, we probably still know the least about her. Everyone else, they're all still little mysteries, but we've kind of got an idea of their character. This one, though, we get an idea about her character, but it's more like reactionary. And I think it's kind of like you were saying, like this stuff does translate to the island. She's already in the story. Everyone else it seems like two different stories before the island, after. Claire's is just one. And I feel like this episode is less about her character and more about just her reacting to the situations that she is thrown into. And we'll definitely get to see, more of that. Hopefully, find out more of her background and backstory. Yeah,
you're right.
It was more about the situation. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. It was more about the scenario than it was about Claire.
Yeah, and kind of in the same way that like Sawyer's episode. We got flashbacks with Sawyer, but I feel like outside of him deciding, to drop everything when he sees the kid, I feel like his flashbacks kind of did nothing to give us anything new to his character. Maybe he's like, he's the same guy, you know.
Mhm.
It's just a different situation. Yeah, like Claire, we're just kind of seeing her involved in this situation. She is reacting to everything.
Mhm.
She still has some agency, you know, when she isn't gonna sign the papers.
And when the pins run out of ink,
Dude, like when the first pin did it, I was like, uh-huh.
mhm.
Uh-huh. And then pin 2 did it. I was like, no way. Yes. Oh my
Yeah.
God. Such a
And
oh
she
man.
didn't give the third pin an opportunity because I was thinking that's the John Locke rule. Ask me
Yeah.
3 times and I'll give it to you. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
nope, she didn't give that third chance.
Uh-huh.
She booked it.
She booked it. Man, like that what?
That
Oh
was a
man.
really
People
cool little twist. Yeah, I love that.
some people might think it's cheesy, some people might think
Mhm.
it's too much. I don't care. I thought that was brilliant. I
And you
was
see, I think
yeah,
this is why I
blown
really
away.
wanted you to watch the show because we're brothers. I've known you your whole life. You've known me the majority of my life. And like
It's
we know
true.
what each other like. We also know what
Mhm.
we dislike. And like I've always felt like you would really dig this show, but so much of like the complaints I hear about Lost or whatever, oh, it's too confusing, blah, blah, yada yada yada. It's kind of stuff like that, like, oh, that was cheesy. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And just knowing what comes and stuff, it's like, no, I think it's really well done, and I'm pretty sure Sam's gonna dig it. You know,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I know. We don't really talk about the author of Harry Potter. She's been lost in time. Um, so several
Mhm.
people have mentioned that it was actually Shakira who wrote that series.
Mhm.
So I got to give her
I
props
fully believe that. Yeah.
because a big
Props to
part
Shakira.
of Shakira's Harry Potter series was that I can't believe I just said that was how much of the Harry Potter story and mystery is solved with the simple answer because of love.
Mhm.
That's it. Why did this happen? Because of love, Sam. And
Yeah.
we ate that up, but for some reason, when Lost doesn't do that exactly, but when they do stuff like that, they don't like it. Maybe because
Yeah.
it's a visual medium, it's a shorter, it's 45 minute episodes.
Mhm.
It doesn't, it lasts 6 years. It doesn't last your whole childhood. Maybe because it's so fast, like there was less buy-in for that. You know, a lot of
Mhm.
people didn't were like, I don't accept that.
Yeah.
I want hard
Yeah, I mean
evidence.
yeah, I mean to to comment on that sort of trope, I guess in Harry Potter, I think you could make the argument that like it was stories that were designed for children, and
Mhm.
then of course, you know, as Harry got older, we got older, so the audience grew up and all that, and so like some of the content changed, but that theme of the, you know, like love conquers all, like that, I feel like you could maybe get away with that because it's like children's storytelling, long form children's storytelling.
It's literal
um
magic.
yeah, and literal magic, you know, they state it right up there. It's like we're in a magic school, everybody is
Mhm.
magic, we've got wands, you know. It's there's no edifice put up, you know, where it's like
Yeah.
no, we're something else. Whereas Lost is treated as real can be, except for the fact that all of these other little things are happening. Yeah, that's just coincidence. Yeah, no, that's still coincidence. Like,
Or
and then all
is
these
it?
coincidences
Yeah.
start adding up to something that's like, no, there's something going on here. There's something about this place.
Mhm.
You know, it's tricking everybody into watching a sci-fi. I feel like a closer comparison would be Battlestar.
Mhm.
How from the beginning, one of Battlestar's biggest themes was religion. You know,
Mhm.
is the concept of religion, like, is there a god? Are there multiple gods? You know, is there a greater purpose? It's right there in the freaking opening titles of every episode.
Right.
You know, it's like the Cylons have a plan, and
Mhm.
that's all they talk about. You know, Six is always telling Baltar about, you know, like God has a plan for all of us. You know, the survivors are all being led. but when they come out and not outright say that, like, oh yeah, I guess, also spoilers for Battlestar Galactica if you haven't watched it yet, stop listening right now. But yeah, when they kind of posit the idea that, oh yeah, Starbuck died, and what we're seeing is like her angel guiding everybody, like, nah, people don't like that. Or when we get the other when we get the other 6 in Baltar, like, oh yeah, maybe they were angels, maybe they were, God's servants that only certain people could see. Like, people don't like that, because it's I don't know why. It was written,
It's
right
just
there.
science fiction. There's no place for that.
Yeah, and so
Even
it's like,
though
that's
literally, like you said, it's in the opening credits. It's in the narration.
Yeah, so it's like, I don't know what it is, but yeah, I feel like you're right. And I think it's going back to, my issues with, like the psychic. It's like, how much can you stomach? How much are you willing to to like
Right.
let it go? And me, yeah, I'm not a highbrow kind of guy. I enjoy my Mai Tais while watching The Evil Dead, just like everybody else, just like every other schmo. All right.
Yeah.
But I don't know. When stuff like that happens, I think it works. And especially if you do it right. And I feel like Lost did it right. They gave you that right there. It's like, okay, that pin didn't work. Pin number 2 also doesn't work. I'm not even going to give pin number 3 a try. It's like, yeah, I think phenomenal. Just phenomenal.
And it's one of those things too, because I don't know how many people caught it. This is the first time I caught it. Like, I knew that was there, but this is the first time I made the connection to what Locke was talking about a couple episodes ago of Charlie. It's like, oh yeah, 3 chances and I'll give you what you want.
I think it when shows do that.
Yeah, me too. I think it's brilliant. And it took me 3 watches to realize that. That show was 16 years ago, and I just realized it. I was like, wow. So
this Lost show, it's something special.
It's going places, man. All right, so you're gonna give it to Emily DeRaven.
Yes, I am.
I'm giving it to Jorge Garcia.
Okay.
Again.
Yeah.
Hurley really played a important role. He's been pretty much in the background this whole time, just doing little things here and there. But he's making changes. He's helping shape the story, and Jorge Garcia is awesome in that character. Okay, any predictions?
All right. I'm gonna predict that Ethan is part of some super secret cult that wants to use Claire's baby for I don't know, Illuminati type stuff.
Okay, so, Ethan is part of a baby stealing cult. All right.
Yeah. So I'm gonna predict that, and I'm also gonna predict that I think Locke and Saeed are headed in for some kind of a face-off.
Ooh. Okay.
Because Locke is just standing there. We didn't even talk about that. A part of the episode ends where Saeed comes back to the caves. Locke is the first person who sees him, and then Jack and Kate are there, and they sort of tend to him, and he's telling them, they're like, oh yeah, I met the French woman. We're not alone on the island. We're not alone. There's something else out there. And then that's when Hurley comes in and, says that, like, hey, out of all 46 of us, there's one person who's not on the manifest. And that's where we get, like, the Ethan reveal at the end. But Locke is just really staring, like, intently at Saeed. And I kind of feel like, one, I already think that Saeed's the one who, or that Locke is the one who knocked Saeed out, like, 3 episodes ago. And yeah, I feel like Saeed is going to catch on pretty quick that, like, something's up with Locke. Yeah. Especially now that he's, like, on paranoid mode. He's on high alert. He's like, I almost just died. I'm hearing voices. Like, yeah, this bald white dude with the scar who's, like, oddly good and specific at hunting boar. Yeah, he's something's up with that dude.
Hell yeah. All right, cool. Well, we'll see what happens next time when we talk about episode 11, All the Best Cowboys Have Daddy Issues. Yes, that's what it's called. Feeling guilty about not believing Claire, Jack leads the survivors in a search for her, Charlie, and the mysterious Ethan Rom. Dun, dun, dun.
How did I know that with the title like that, of course it was going to be like a Jack focused episode.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know. Well, we already know he does have daddy issues,
man.
But this will also be the first time we get a new flashback for a character we already have. So there's so many people on this island, so many characters we still haven't spent that much time with. We still haven't seen half of the cast flashbacks, but we're going to get more of Jack's. That's going to be interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So, so that's it for this time. Until next time, enjoy your holidays as best you can. Hit us up, ask us some questions on our social medias. It's December, so ask us some Christmas questions or whatever other holiday questions you can think of. We'll try and come up with a legitimate answer. If not, we'll fake it. But you can find me at _ Matt Jimenez on Twitter, Holy Hand Grenade of Antioch on Instagram, and Sam.
You can find me on both Twitter and Instagram at Real, that's REEL Texas Weirdo. And guys, if you like the show, if you like what you're hearing, tell us. Matt already dropped that hashtag, but don't forget to rate and review our podcast.
Yes, subscribe.
Subscribe, that'll bump us up, and that'll get, more people interested, more people talking about us. And I think that's one of the things that, one of the reasons why we did the podcast, why we started this podcast. One, because we're still in this global pandemic and can't really go too far out of our confines. But one, we always wanted to do a podcast together, and I've never seen Lost, and so that's fun. Every week I get something with my brother, and we get to talk about it for a little bit. But I think one of the bigger things is that, we wanted to spread some joy, we wanted to spread, some kind of good, just put it out there in the world. And so really, if you guys want to talk, that's why we're here. We want to talk to you. We want to say hi. If you give us a like, if you give us a review, I will read out your name and review on the show. How about that? I think that's a good idea.
Hit us up. Yeah, so the hashtag is Ask Sam and Matt, and we'll either answer your questions on an episode or we'll make a special Q&A episode. But yeah, other than that, I would like to make a special thank you to Colombian icon Shakira. Thank you for writing such a wonderful, magical book series for us. Until next time.
So much to me. Thank you.
Get lost.
Get lost.